what Jesus really taught about prosperity. The hidden kingdom principle for centuries. The question of prosperity has been misunderstood, often reduced to material accumulation, while ignoring the deeper structure preserved in ancient teachings. Within the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke, Jesus presents a radically different vision of abundance, one rooted in alignment rather than acquisition. Early interpreters of Gnostic tradition observed that the language used by Jesus often pointed toward inner transformation as the foundation of external provision. The phrase "seek first the kingdom" was never presented as metaphor alone, but as an instruction describing order within consciousness. Jesus. The teachings preserved in the Gospels suggest that prosperity emerges when the inner structure reflects harmony with divine law. Scholars who examined the linguistic patterns of the teachings noted the emphasis on simplicity, trust, and continuity rather than excess. When these principles are understood together, a coherent framework of prosperity begins to appear. The question is no longer how to acquire more, but how to align with what allows provision to flow consistently. The teachings attributed to Jesus Christ present prosperity as a consequence of alignment rather than accumulation. Within the narrative preserved in the Gospel of Matthew, the instruction to seek first the kingdom establishes priority as the central principle of stability. Ancient interpreters often emphasized that order within intention influences order within experience. The kingdom described in the teaching is frequently understood as an inner condition of coherence, reflecting harmony between perception and action. When priorities are disordered, effort becomes fragmented and continuity becomes difficult to sustain. The traditional understanding suggests that prosperity follows structure in the same way that harvest follows preparation. Early readers observed that the teaching redirects attention away from anxiety over material security and toward cultivation of clarity. The instruction implies that provision is not disconnected from awareness, but influenced by orientation of thought and discipline of action. Simplicity appears as a stabilizing force, reducing internal division that often prevents continuity. The absence of excess does not indicate lack, but preservation of balance capable of sustaining growth. Ancient commentary frequently notes that trust functions as a principle of integration, allowing decisions to be guided by coherence rather than fear. Jesus, the teaching, does not dismiss material reality, but places it within a broader framework of order. Prosperity, therefore, becomes associated with continuity rather than accumulation alone. The narrative preserved in early traditions suggests that stability emerges when intention aligns with what is considered enduring. The emphasis on kingdom first reflects prioritization of structure capable of supporting lasting development. Within this interpretation, prosperity is not pursued directly, but emerges as a consequence of alignment with principle. The repetition of this theme across teachings suggests that continuity was considered more valuable than momentary acquisition. The statement that all necessary things shall be added introduces the concept of provision as a function of alignment rather than pursuit alone. Within the Gospel of Luke, the teaching often appears in the context of releasing excessive concern over material outcomes. Traditional interpretation suggests that anxiety fragments perception, reducing the ability to recognize opportunity already present. The instruction, therefore, redirects attention toward coherence, emphasizing continuity over urgency. Early readers observed that the teaching presents provision as responsive to orientation of intention. When priorities are stabilized, perception becomes capable of recognizing what contributes to continuity. The concept of enough emerges as a central theme, demonstrating that balance can generate stability more effectively than excess. Ancient commentary frequently describes sufficiency as protection against cycles of fear that interrupt development. The teaching, therefore, reframes prosperity as participation in order rather than control over circumstance. Trust functions not as passivity but as alignment with structure perceived as reliable. Simplicity allows continuity to develop without fragmentation of effort. The kingdom principle suggests that orientation influences outcome through consistency of perception and action. Early theological reflections frequently emphasize that coherence produces sustainability. Prosperity is therefore described as continuity of provision rather than accumulation without direction. The presence of order allows development to proceed without disruption caused by divided intention. Traditional interpretation presents sufficiency as evidence of stability capable of extending across time. The kingdom principle therefore reveals prosperity as participation in structure rather than acquisition without orientation. Continuity becomes possible when intention reflects clarity and action reflects consistency. After this video was first shared, hunters asked the same question: where can they go deeper? We put together a complete guide with everything you need. The link is in the comments. Within the teachings attributed to Jesus Christ, the concept of provision sufficient for each moment appears as a stabilizing principle that preserves continuity of growth. In the narrative preserved in the Gospel of Matthew, the instruction regarding daily bread emphasizes rhythm rather than accumulation, suggesting that sustainability emerges when life is approached as a sequence of aligned steps. Traditional interpretation often highlights that sufficiency prevents the cycle of fear generated by constant comparison or the perception of lack. When perception becomes focused on what is missing, attention becomes fragmented, reducing the ability to recognize what is already present and available. Early readers frequently observed that sufficiency protects stability by preventing dependence upon excess as a source of identity. The teaching therefore introduces a framework in which provision is understood as continuity rather than accumulation without direction. Prosperity emerges as the capacity to sustain development across time, supported by coherence between intention and action. Within classical understanding, daily provision symbolizes participation in a rhythm that maintains equilibrium between effort and reception. The teaching does not discourage growth, but situates growth within proportion, ensuring that expansion does not disrupt balance. Traditional commentary frequently emphasizes that stability of provision allows attention to remain focused on meaningful development rather than preservation of surplus. The principle of enough protects continuity by reducing the internal pressure generated by fear of loss. The absence of excessive concern allows clarity to guide decisions that contribute to sustainable progress. Early theological reflections often describe sufficiency as evidence of alignment with order capable of sustaining development. Prosperity, within this interpretation, reflects continuity, supported by proportion rather than accumulation driven by anxiety. Jesus, the teaching, therefore suggests that provision aligned with rhythm generates stability capable of supporting expansion without disruption. Sufficiency becomes the condition through which continuity remains possible across changing circumstances. Within this framework, prosperity reflects equilibrium preserved through alignment with proportion rather than dependence upon excess. The teachings attributed to Jesus Christ frequently present the kingdom as an inner condition that precedes external transformation. Within the narrative preserved in the Gospel of Luke, the kingdom is described as present within awareness, suggesting that alignment begins internally before manifesting in visible outcomes. Traditional interpretation often emphasizes that external conditions reflect continuity with internal structure. When intention becomes coherent, action becomes consistent, allowing development to proceed without interruption caused by fragmentation of purpose. Early readers frequently interpreted the kingdom as a principle of integration, unifying perception and action within stable orientation. Prosperity, therefore, emerges as continuity between intention and participation, allowing development to unfold progressively. Within classical understanding, alignment with the kingdom preserves clarity capable of guiding decision across changing conditions. The teaching frequently emphasizes that internal order influences external continuity, reinforcing the perception that stability originates within awareness before becoming visible in circumstance. Traditional commentary often highlights that coherence protects development from disruption caused by divided intention. The kingdom within, therefore, represents orientation capable of sustaining continuity across time. Prosperity becomes participation in structure rather than control over outcome, allowing development to unfold through consistency rather than force. Early theological reflections frequently describe the kingdom as the condition through which perception becomes capable of recognizing what contributes to continuity. Alignment, therefore, functions as preservation of coherence between awareness and action. Within this interpretation, prosperity reflects continuity sustained by integration rather than accumulation alone. The teaching suggests that when perception remains aligned with structure, development becomes capable of sustaining itself across changing circumstances. Everything in this video is the foundation. The complete guide is pinned in the first comment. The most important Aramaic words, their exact pronunciation, and the full activation protocols for those ready to go deeper. The link is there waiting for you, And if this activated something in you, if you felt a shift while watching, you are ready for what comes next. In the next video, we enter the Aramaic activation codes for healing, the precise frequency sequence Jesus used to restore the body at the cellular level, the same technology. A deeper transmission, do not miss Italiano, right now. Before you close this video, speak the forward quadist and come to the comments and tell us, what did you feel? What shifted? We read every single response. And if this teaching found you today, subscribe to this channel. Every week we go deeper into the ancient frequency codes that were always meant to be yours. The teachings preserved in the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke reveal prosperity as a progressive alignment between perception, intention, and action. Trust stabilizes awareness, allowing decisions to emerge from clarity rather than fear. Simplicity preserves focus on what sustains continuity, preventing fragmentation of effort that weakens development. Detachment from excess protects freedom of participation, preventing identity from becoming dependent upon accumulation. Provision sufficient for each stage of the journey demonstrates that sustainability emerges through proportion rather than urgency. Alignment with the kingdom within integrates perception and action, allowing development to unfold consistently across changing conditions. When these principles operate together, prosperity becomes continuity, supported by coherence rather than acquisition driven by uncertainty. Traditional interpretation frequently emphasizes that stability precedes expansion, indicating that growth becomes sustainable when supported by structure capable of maintaining balance. The teachings, therefore, reveal prosperity as participation in order rather than control over circumstance. Practical application begins with organization of priorities, preservation of clarity, and continuity of intention across time. When perception remains aligned with what sustains development, provision becomes recognizable as part of an ongoing process. Prosperity therefore reflects stability capable of sustaining growth progressively rather than temporarily.